Hi there, and welcome to the Family Travel Workshop interview series, Getting Inspired and Prepared for Rewarding Family Travel the Easy Way. During today's interview, we'll be discussing tips for taking your family on African safari, and I'm excited to introduce Sarah Fazendin. She's a mother of two, an avid family traveler with her own blog on the subject, and she currently works for Rothschild Safaris, which is a Denver-based luxury tour operator. So as you can see, she comes with us with a wealth of personal and professional experience with family travel, especially in the realm of African safaris. So welcome, Sarah, and thank you so much for offering to share your insight with our group today.
Thanks for having me.
So before we jump right into African safaris with your kids, I just want to help our listeners get to know you a little bit more. So maybe if we start off, if you could tell us a little bit more about your own family and travels with them.
Yeah, definitely. I guess going even back before family, I've worked in the travel industry my entire career. So my whole life, both personally and professionally, has always been, kind of wrapped up in travel and international travel. So once, we had our first child, we just continued to travel as much as we possibly could. Obviously, things changed. I have two kids now. I have a 5-year-old and a 9-year-old. We've done, up until about last year, we did a lot of domestic travel, a lot of Mexico, beach trips and that sort of thing, which, was just easy, fun, and relaxing for everybody. Last year, however, so my kids were 4 and 8, we kind of did our first really big adventure. We had the opportunity to spend the entire summer in Central America. And so we did Panama, Costa Rica, and Nicaragua, over the course of a few months, which was just wonderful. I mean, it was really the first, big trip for sure that the kids have done. And it's just, the first big trip that we've done it together as a family. So, it was great. That we learned a lot. It's just, it's just funny to, experience that. As a mom, and I consider myself to be kind of a professional traveler, and I was still learning things, on the fly.
Totally. That sounds awesome. So how did you have that opportunity then to be able to take off for 3 months like that?
Yeah, so I was working just as a consultant last year. So I took my laptop with me and, found internet at every chance I had, but was able to work remotely. And my husband actually had a sabbatical, and so we just really took advantage of that time to travel together as a family.
Awesome. And is that when you started up your blog?
I've been writing. I have been, sort of a travel writer for a long time. Obviously, as someone who works in marketing and travel, writing about destinations and experiences is kind of just part and parcel to that. I started travel blogging full-time in 2014. So I had been writing for a bit before we did the Costa Rica, the Central America trip.
Awesome. And for those of you listening, it's called A Family Travel Blog. So if you just go to familytravelblog.com, you can find it there. And just so, if folks are thinking about checking it out, what kinds of, what's your style, or what sort of topics do you tend to focus on, or can you tell them a little bit about the blog?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, I think any sort of blog or content about travel definitely serves to inspire, and so you definitely can expect to find plenty of colorful stories, beautiful images, and that sort of thing. But I think what sets a family travel blog apart from some of the other family travel sites out there is that it's really packed with very practical how-to information. So I simply write about what people ask me. Having been, in the travel industry for so long and as a mother with my own children, I do get a lot of questions from friends and family and people from around the world now that I have the blog about how to travel to very specific destinations. And so the articles mainly you'll find are very specific. Here's how you do this experience. Here's how you get to this place. Here's a very specific itinerary for, Nicaragua, for example. So it's very, very specific stuff that if you're thinking about traveling to a destination, really practical resources is kind of the focus there.
Okay, awesome. And so now you've been working with Rothschild Safaris for about a year, is that right?
Yeah. I mean, it was the opportunity was definitely a homecoming, I guess you could say. I've worked in African travel. My entire career has pretty much been spent in Africa, and so it's a great little industry. Kind of people come into the African travel world and never leave. So definitely working with people that I've known for a long time in an industry that I love, and so it's been wonderful.
Oh, awesome. I had the pleasure of meeting both Sarah and Yora, who's the founder, last month, and it was just so fun to start to get to know you both, and it seems like such a great group of really passionate, fun, mostly women. Just super excited to make like the most amazing experiences that are like tailored for each individual. Is that right? It's mostly custom itineraries, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, every single trip that we sell or put together is customized. We have tons of itineraries on our website just because I think it's important for people to get a feel for what can be done and kind of what the price range is. But at the end of the day, every single trip is definitely customized because no two groups are the same.
Right. Okay. And I know you specialize in African safaris, but you also have trips to other places. Can you just tell us just a little bit more about Rothschild? Kind of what a person can, what kind of things, what kind of trips a person might be able to work with you on, and what to say.
Yeah, definitely. So our heart and soul is definitely Africa. Leora, our founder, was born and raised in South Africa. Worked in the industry, her entire career before she started Rothschild Safaris about 20 years ago. And for anyone who's been on a safari, you kind of understand this very, luxurious, customized, individual experience. And so our safaris, are all about, getting you into some of the most remote corners of Africa, doing it in style and in comfort, in ultimate, safety with the best guides, and having really powerful, opportunities to connect with wildlife, local people, and just being out in nature. There really is something about Africa that kind of speaks to your soul. As our clients, kind of covered Africa, right, had been maybe 2 or 3 times, they started to say, well, where can we go next? We want to go to India, or we want to check out Sri Lanka, or we want to check out Peru. And so, as requested by our clients, we started to expand into other countries where we felt like we could offer a very similar trip, right, with the highest level of guiding, really meaningful wildlife, nature, and cultural interactions, and kind of put together that same style of travel opportunity. And so, you'll see we do sell about 30 countries, or 30 destinations now beyond Africa. Places like, Costa Rica, Myanmar, India, the Galapagos, they're all very big destinations for us at the moment.
Oh, fun. Okay, well, super. Thanks for that. So as you know, many of our listeners are moms and dads, fascinated and terrified with, at the same time, the idea of taking their kids on African safari. Like they worry about the long journey, the unrest there, malaria, encounters with wild animals, not encountering wild animals, and all kinds of other things. It's just like sort of this big mystery place. And, regardless of who they end up, working with to go there, I'd love to get your opinion on what are the most important things that parents should consider in order to craft an African safari vacation that's both rewarding and safe and exciting for the whole family.
Yeah, we do a lot of family travel, first of all. The majority of our clients are some sort of combination of family groups, whether it's typical, family with young kids or a multi-generational group or two families traveling together. That's really, definitely a specialty of ours. We all have kids. We traveled to Africa with our kids, so it's definitely something that we specialize in. In fact, Leora, many years running, has been acknowledged by Travel and Leisure, the travel magazine, as the leading safari operator for families. And so it is something that we take very seriously, and I think, we're probably pretty good at it. But there's always kind of 5 things that I like to tell people if they're thinking about taking their kids to Africa to consider, right, whether they travel with us or someone else. But there's a few, kind of important things to think about when you're deciding on anything, right, destination itinerary. So I think the first and foremost is, the itinerary and planning your itinerary in a way that's going to work for everybody. And this is so hard to do, if you haven't been there. So I think, one of the most important reasons to work with a professional, someone who really has, been to these places and has a lot of experience in selling these destinations is so important. Pacing is important, so, don't move around too much, right? Try and pick a few key places that you can kind of hang out and settle in, and that typically tends to be the best opportunity for kids to kind of get the most out of it. Along the same lines with itinerary and everything is picking the right destination. You've got destinations like Kenya, Tanzania, South Africa that are just, phenomenal wildlife destinations. The quantity and quality of game in those places is the best on the continent. There's a lot of other destinations that are fabulous. You've got Namibia and Zimbabwe and some of these other places that are great, but are definitely more of a second-timer's destination. So kind of picking the right destination is important. And again, working with a travel expert is someone who can really help guide the planning of that itinerary. The second thing to consider is age. And, we have taken all ages of people to Africa, young and old. But I think, if this is such a big trip, it can be a trip of a lifetime for a lot of people. I think if you're looking at sort of age 6 or 7 and above tends to be the best for everybody. Any younger, and there's going to probably be some restrictions on certain camps and lodges that you can stay in. Some of them do have a minimum age of 7. And that's just for safety and enjoyment of, other guests around you and that sort of thing. And also by that age, kids they're a little bit more self-sufficient. We just see it tends to work a little bit better in terms of patience and travel ability.
Get more out of it at that age, too.
Right. I mean, it's just a long trip. And yes. Exactly. Yeah. They will remember more. They will have more observations because they have, more experiences to kind of relate to what they're seeing. And then I guess the third thing going along with age would be flexibility. It is such a big trip. It's something that gets planned a year in advance. I think there's very high expectations for everything. And one of the things that I've seen is a lot of times parents get sort of anxious about or feel like they need to force their kids into the game viewing experience. And so, when you're in Africa, it can be kind of long days in a car. And the reason is, you're kind of up with the sun because that's when the wildlife tends to be most active. The light for photography is really pretty that time of day. So you kind of, it's an early start, you're in a vehicle. And if you're kind of waiting to see something happen, like the great wildebeest migration, if you're waiting for the migration across the river, or if you see, for example, a cat, like maybe there's a lion about to hunt, you want to sit there and wait for that to happen because that's a really cool thing to see. But it can take an hour or two, and so sometimes it can be difficult for kids to kind of sit there. And if you're covering distance in a theme park, it can be a long drive for kids. And so, I think the advice there is if kids have kind of had their fill of days in a vehicle, let them stay in camp. Let them stay there. There's always some sort of, nanny or some person to look after them at these camps. I mean, there's the staff. It's so wonderful. Let them stay home. So, and then the adults can go out and have a really great game drive. And so just to be a little bit flexible in how you sort of think of kids interacting with the actual, game viewing experience.
Right. Now, have you ever seen, kids out on a game drive, or would you recommend to bring, whatever, an Etch-a-Sketch or something, to do while you're waiting?
Yeah,
or
I certainly
do you ever do that?
I certainly have seen kids, you do see kids from time to time, playing on phones and stuff like that in the back of a car. I don't know. I guess that's just personal preference. I think as a parent, you just kind of do what you need to do to get by. But, the first couple of days are very exciting. And I think sometimes just letting your kids take a day off of game viewing kind of re-energizes them, and then you'll be moving to a new location. The guides are so fabulous, though. They definitely can talk and give you so much information and keep the kids engaged. And so, part of this whole idea of being flexible, assumes that, on the trips that we plan, we are using the best guides and the best camps. And these guys, who are really wonderful with kids. And that's kind of part of the process, so that you don't have to, quote unquote, entertain your kids the whole time.
That's nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So then
would you say that it's important to be really quiet while you're? Is it
100%?
You're trying to keep kids quiet while you're in?
Well, by the age of 6 or 7, they typically can do that, But it is. They have to be quiet. They have to be able to follow directions, and that's just for safety. There are definitely some, and it's not much, and it's not scary, but the kids do need to follow directions and just kind of do what they're told.
Yeah. Okay.
One of the other things that I think is important, again, kind of along this line of keeping kids engaged and making sure that everybody in the family is enjoying themselves, I really like to see itineraries that start off with safari and do maybe a couple of different safari destinations, a couple of different parks, right, so that you can see different ecosystems and different landscapes in whatever country you're in, and then, end with a few days at the beach, because Africa actually does have some really amazing coastline. The Indian Ocean is just, it's beautiful, it's warm, it's an opportunity to experience a different culture, because on the sort of the coast of Africa, you're going to see a very Swahili sort of Arabic culture versus inland Africa, which is much more the, traditional Maasai and other sort of African tribes that we think of. And, it's just it's a nice way to end the trip, especially before you hop on a long flight home. Like I said earlier, the days on safari begin really early. It can be cold in the mornings, no matter what time of the year it is. So it's kind of nice to just, have a few days where you don't have to get up early and everybody can relax and do some really kind of cool, interesting cultural things at the same time.
Oh, awesome. How long of a trip would you normally recommend for, an African safari trip?
Yeah, so I would definitely say no less than 10 days. And that is for a lot of reasons. If you're flying all that way, it would be silly to do anything less. It takes a few days to catch up on jet lag. If luggage gets lost, sometimes there's a couple of days that, you don't want to be there too short. It just doesn't make sense. And then also, that gives you the opportunity to do 3 solid stops on an itinerary. So 2 different game parks and then the beach, or 3 different game parks or whatever. But I think 10 days is sort of a minimum.
Okay. And in between game parks, is that usually like a road trip, or is that a flight normally? For the itinerary that you're thinking of.
Yeah, it definitely depends. The vast majority of our itineraries are all flights. They're small bush planes. Sometimes they're private charters. Other times they're scheduled. But the vast majority of our clients, particularly those traveling with children, will do flights.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that. We just recently got back from South America with our 2 kids, and we were trying to decide whether to go by road or go by plane from Santiago, Chile to Mendoza, Argentina. And my husband really wanted to go by road, but luckily I won that argument, and we flew, which was an amazing flight. It was only half an hour versus like 6 hours, and the flight is in one of those small little planes, and it like hugs the peaks, and it felt like we were on like a chartered, plane tour. It was just amazing. And I would think that that might be a similar experience in Africa if you're taking those small bush planes. That would be such an exciting experience for kids.
It is really fun. I mean, there are some people who maybe get a little bit nervous, but, these pilots who operate in Africa are honestly some of the best pilots, like, anywhere in the world. The planes are, super high quality. It's all very safe, but it is really exciting because, oftentimes they'll let the kids kind of, be co-pilot, and, when you land in, the Serengeti or the Masai Mara, you often are flying over, a herd of elephants, or you'll see some, lions like sleeping, as you're kind of coming in, and it's a really cool perspective. And yeah, I mean, it's so much better to fly for 45 minutes than drive for 6 hours. So.
Right. So, what have you found, like, is some good things to do to help sort of prepare your kids, sort of mentally, emotionally, physically, before the trip happens? Things to practice, or, games, or, what?
Yeah, I think that the learning and the ultimate takeaway definitely happens, during and after the trip. So there isn't really any amount of sort of, education or preparing that you can do that is going to, make the end result like any better, if that makes any sense. But it's just such a powerful experience to be there, to see the way of life, to experience the animals, to learn about conservation. I mean, it really is like a life-changing trip for kids. Having said all of that, depending on the age of the kids, I think it's always, if you're going to East Africa, it's always really fun to learn a few words of Swahili. It's a very easy language. It's very phonetic. So that is a really fun thing to do. And they guides and everybody there just, thinks it's hilarious when kids kind of hop off a plane and already know a few words of Swahili. Obviously, everybody speaks perfect English, so it's more of a, just kind of a fun thing to do. But that even young kids can pick up a few words. It's a very easy language to learn. There's some great movies. I mean, Out of Africa is just the classic, safari film. So watching movies like that is great. For older kids, I mean, I think the history of Africa and colonialism is so delicate and complex that, high school kids, I think, can and should learn a little bit of that before they go, because that is very interesting. I mean, but that's a kind of an age-appropriate thing, it depends on how old the kids are. And then I guess the final thing that we see a lot of kids kind of getting involved in before they travel is conservation. Obviously, the poaching of elephants and rhino has been in the news so much lately that a lot of kids are already sort of aware of that. But that's a really interesting way to tie, wildlife and what you'll be experiencing together before the trip actually happens. And, there can be some fundraising that's done. There's so many organizations out there right now that are doing really powerful things to curb poaching and, protect ecosystems and that sort of thing. And that's kind of a really fun way to get kids excited about the wildlife.
Oh, I love that. And that reminds me, I remember seeing on your website, Rothschild has a whole section on their website about family travel to Africa. So it's a really great resource for anyone to just go check out. And I did notice that you had that you do some work with schools there, and there are some opportunities that you have for kids to have some more deeper cultural experiences. And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. And there are a few schools that we sponsor as a company. However, again, this goes back to, I think the importance of working with an expert when it comes to Africa. Our partners on the ground are, like I said a number of times, some of the best guides, very well connected. They've been operating in these areas for a really long time. And so we're able to, based on the interests and the needs of our clients, of the travelers, sort of custom create experiences beyond just the safari stuff, right? So we can organize, if someone's a teacher, we can organize for them to go into a local, Maasai school and give a little lesson on something. Or if we have musicians, we can organize for a performance or a little music lesson or something music related, say in Nairobi or Arusha. And so we can, the sky's the limit. We've done a lot of stuff. Whether it's really, actually hands-on like volunteering or just more like sort of just mutually beneficial stuff where an American child has an opportunity to go into an African school. Oftentimes both parties, benefit. And so we have done some really fun and unique stuff. But we can do anything really based on the interests and, whoever the traveler is and what they want to do.
Great. Yeah, that sounds like that would be an amazing opportunity for kids to, I don't know, just connect on a deeper level with, different ways of life. That their way of life, not everybody has that opportunity, and I think it's important for American kids to realize. With my kids, I was super picky, and they waste a lot of food, and so recently I've been trying to help them learn about other kids in the world who don't have the luxury of all this food, and and that we should think about them before we just throw most of our dinner in the trash. And I think for my son particularly, he's starting to think about that. I've seen him tell my daughter that, don't waste your food, there are kids that are hungry. But if he still doesn't really, I don't think he really gets it because he hasn't seen it himself, and I think that would really be a powerful experience for kids to connect with kids that don't have what they have. And I imagine there's a lot of opportunities like that in Africa.
Well, and it's interesting what I've seen, whether it's Africa or anywhere in the world. I mean, our Central America experience was this very much happened to us last year, but, you can do anything in preparation, but once you get there, these kids are kind of having all of these experiences and all of these little, inputs are going into their minds, and a lot of times the end result of that isn't immediately noticeable. I mean, it could be months and months later. The kid will say something about an experience they had or something they saw that, you might have thought was just a passing thing or, that went unnoticed, but it doesn't, right? And so kids really do, absorb all of this. In Africa, I think it's just so dramatically, different that that's almost inevitable, but, it's not always immediately, that they have these, great observations. Sometimes it takes a while to sink in and, really have them appreciate and understand what they have been experiencing.
Yeah. Okay. All right, and then just lastly, I wanted to touch briefly on the topic of malaria, because I know for my own Older Family Travel Bugs Facebook group, there has been quite a bit of concern expressed around malaria and bringing their kids to Africa. So I know that's definitely a concern of parents. And so what advice would you give on that? I know that there are some areas that are maybe more risky than others, and some people are more determined to take malaria medicine, and some people aren't. And what has been your experience, and what would you recommend?
Yeah, so there definitely are areas in Africa that are malaria-free. So there's a few parks in South Africa that don't have malaria. So if someone is extremely concerned about that, that's probably the best bet. Having said that, the chances of actually getting malaria are extremely, extremely, extremely low. The reason why it's such an epidemic in Africa is because local people do not have access to sleeping nets. They're not sleeping in areas where there are a lot of mosquitoes. They're not sleeping under nets, and so they're very, very exposed, particularly during dawn and dusk, which is when the malaria mosquitoes come out. And the reason so many people die from it is that they don't have access to healthcare. It's as simple as that. So the chances of a tourist or a traveler actually getting it on a pretty high-end safari is extremely, extremely, extremely low. In fact, I don't think we've ever had anyone, have that experience.
Right.
And then, but, we're not doctors, right? And so, I mean, it's very hard to sort of say, what we would suggest that people do, but, my children do not take any sort of prophylactic or whatever for malaria. It's, I've just personally had some problems with, like, having a hard time sleeping and like, stomach problems taking it, and so we don't do that anymore. But, just being sort of vigilant about wearing mosquito repellent during the certain, times of day where the mosquitoes come out, like I said, it's not in dusk. Sleeping, not out in the open, but under a net of some sort, or in a room, which obviously you are, when you're at safari.
Yeah.
It's really all it takes. I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in Wisconsin, and the mosquito situation there is like 100 times worse than I've ever had in Africa. There just actually really aren't that many bugs. It's a very healthy sort of ecosystem. I mean, it's not swampy or, contrary to probably what people think. It's not just, sort of swampy jungle that you'd have in other places of the world. So,
we imagine those muddy puddles where the hippos are hanging out, covered in flies.
It's not. It's most of East Africa is actually quite high. It's kind of like we are here. It's about 5,000 feet. So, it's just not the sort of lowland swamp that a lot of people think. In fact, when I was pregnant even, I went over to Africa, a number of different places, and wasn't taking any prophylactics and did not have a problem. So, I think I totally understand like that it's a really scary thing. And, there's some great travel clinics around here, and there's a few good ones in Boulder too, and they've got all the information. But, there are ways to prevent it. It's extremely unlikely. The one thing that is a requirement, I think, that parents should know is a yellow fever vaccination. So that is an actual, requirement. You have to have a card that says you've had it in order to get into most of these countries.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good thing to know that to prepare for. And that, luckily, it sounds like most people prepare or plan an African safari, a year in advance. So hopefully you'll have time to get all these things in order. But yeah, you don't want to wait till the last minute and then find out that they're about to board the plane.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. And so, you sound like you've been to Africa many, many times, and where have you been specifically with your children? Kenya, Tanzania, Namibia, and South Africa. Okay, and how old were they when they went?
They were sort of 4 and 3 and 6.
Okay. So that was all one trip?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's 3 sounds pretty young, so did you have some, was that a little harder? Was it harder for you to do some of the camps because you had a 3-year-old with you?
Well, obviously the trips that involve younger children, there's certain properties, there's certain camps, there's certain experiences that are appropriate for them and not, not for older kids. I think, and like I said, I think we like to suggest that, I think 6 to 7 is probably a really good age to get over there.
Yeah.
For normal travelers, for people, that are doing this as like a tip of a lifetime type of thing, because it is just better for the whole family.
Definitely. And what would you say were your kids' favorite places or experiences when you went?
Namibia is a lot of fun. It's just a very, kind of, the landscape is very cool. But, South Africa does a great job for family safaris. In fact, we have a special offer that we are running right now. It might be a good time to talk about that. That combines South Africa and actually Mozambique. The Sabi Sand Game Reserve in South Africa is wonderful for families. It's extremely easy to get to. There is a wonderful concentration of wildlife. particularly the Lion Sands Narnia Lodge is a property that really does a fabulous job with children. One of the things I mentioned a little bit earlier is if, kids are kind of getting burned out on sitting in a vehicle, the parent can go off, and then the camp has plenty of, nannies and that sort of thing, and specialist guides that can take the kids and, do things like hunt for toads or look at butterflies or, learn how to, shoot a bow and arrow and kind of do really fun bush stuff that doesn't necessarily involve sitting in a car. So we really like that. We really like the Sabi Sand area. And then, this particular special offer also combines that with the beaches in Mozambique, an area called Vilanculas. As I said, the beaches there are just really pristine and wonderful and beautiful, and it's a cool opportunity for kids to see a little bit of a different culture and experience than what they saw on safari. And this particular program that our special offer we put together is featuring a villa. So instead of a lodge or a typical hotel stay, it's a really great opportunity to spread out and just feel a little bit more at home than maybe at some of the other places.
That sounds wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, that was a perfect segue for that. It's wonderful when we have interviews where it's a company with some resources, and Rothschild Safaris has been generous enough to put together this special offer for our listeners. So can you just where should our listeners go to find out more information or to book it?
Yeah, like I said, everything that we do is customized. This special offer does combine some really amazing pricing and that sort of thing, but the first step is always to chat to one of our travel designers so that they can understand you and your family's dynamics and interests and budgets and all of that. So RothschildSafaris.com is our website. You can give us a call. We actually have offices around the world, so no matter what time of day you call, someone will pick up the phone, which is wonderful. And we can get started that way. Obviously, if the special offer is of interest, definitely mention that. But, like I said, the sky really is the limit. And, we love to customize things and experiences, to make it the best opportunity. We talk a lot about return on experience. So, we understand that a safari is a huge investment of time and money, and we just want to make sure that our travelers definitely get the return that they're looking for on that experience.
Yeah, I can understand. Yeah, that's super important. Well, thank you so much, and I'll be sure to put the link to learn more about it on the blog article when I post the interview, and
awesome.
With some more of the notes on your advice here, and yeah, if the listeners have any questions, you can email me directly at familytravelworkshop@gmail.com, or you can post a comment directly with the article. And if we have lots of questions, I'll certainly get back in touch with you, Sarah, and we'll see if we can get those answered. And thanks so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your time.
Well, thanks for having me, and of course, happy to answer any questions anyone has at any time. So look forward to helping everybody get to Africa.
Great. All right. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye, Sarah.
Thank you. Bye.